I really feel that I'm in the middle of nowhere. So it's like I don't belong to either side. There is a very strong sense of not belonging to anywhere, and there is a very strong sense of alienation and loneliness, which I think has become like the motive of my film.
Hi, my name is James Lattimer. I'm a programmer for the Berlinale Forum, and I'm very, very happy to be talking to Shengze Zhu about her film A River Runs, Turns, Erases, Replaces. Welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us about your film. So maybe you can start by describing the film in 2 or 3 sentences.
So I think the film is about Wuhan. I know the city has, appeared in tons of media coverage from all over the world since last year. It has become, a place that just catch the world's attention. It has become a spectacle in a way. But for me, I guess this film, the Wuhan in this film is different because it's not the one that in the headlines, it's the one in memories. And it's told not from the outside, but from the inside.
On a very practical level, I think, there are obviously some very clear kind of visual motifs that you use in terms of how you show the city. And obviously because of the length of the shots and the work with duration, each individual frame we get to see for a very long time in the film at times. And I was wondering, how did you go about making the selection? Because, one could also imagine a different film about Wuhan that shows it in a completely different way. So I was thinking about the selection on the one hand, and also, in a sense, the challenge of then shooting when you're working with duration in that way, because obviously, the sort of frame that you can have when you're shooting for, let's say, 10 seconds is very different than if you're, going to sustain the image for a number of minutes.
As for the selection of the locations, I would say, at first I just used the map in my phone because I wanted to visit it. I wanted to visit as many locations as possible, especially the ones that I was not familiar with. But gradually, I realized, okay, I'm more into those locations that are, like transient. They are like a transient space. So, for example, like construction sites or ruins, places that are about to go away, places that are about to change. And interestingly, actually, while I was there, at the location, I didn't feel, I didn't have a very strong sense of transience because what was in front of me, what I was looking at, normally, is a huge infrastructure or it's a huge building, made up of concrete and steels. So you feel it could be there forever. It feels static at that moment, but 1 week later, for example, if I revisit this place, the building probably look completely different or just might be completely gone. So that's why I kind of like want to use duration to in contrast to or emphasize on the transience of this space. So the challenge for me really is, as I said, because what I try to do is not just to observe a space, but also to find a way to portray my experience with that space. How a certain space like to define my feelings with it, and how the space is filtered through my eyes and ears, and then ultimately represented in the film. So, and sometimes it's very hard to articulate or capture this experience. So that I would say that's the biggest challenge, and also how to translate or transform, this experience into a cinematic time and space.
All of your films, I think, are in very, very different ways. I think are kind of portraits of China, portraits of contemporary China. And but you yourself obviously have lived out of China in Chicago for quite a few years now. And I was wanting to think about in general, how is it, creating a portrait of a place that you no longer live in? Because and that kind of distance, and also how it was for this film in particular, because obviously I think one of the biggest things about the last year has been this massive increase in distance in terms of where traveling had been a norm for I think all of us for so long, that suddenly going from Chicago to Wuhan has become so much further than it ever would have been.
I never thought that one day, home would be this place that just so far away from me. But I do think my experience of living, in here in Chicago really, really helps me, or in a way, because first, it gives me the opportunity to access, many things, much information that I would not have the access to if I were in China. And also it gives me the opportunity to hear what others might think about China, especially the thoughts and opinions from people who, have a very, very different background than me or than us as Chinese. So, and this also compels me to ask or to think, why they would think about China that way, or what shaped their opinions. Because I feel it's very important is what we're living through right now. It's a time that filled with too much information, really way too much, and also too much misinformation, disinformation. So, and in order to, have a more clearer idea like about what's going on, you really, the first things that you have to have the access to. So that's one of the important reasons that I really appreciate my experience, and also I appreciate the experience that I have with China, and also here with America, because so I intentionally maintain this distance from China. And also here, because I only have lived here for 5 years, so I feel I don't feel that I blend into the American culture, the American society. I mean, I might feel very different in 10 years probably, but now I really feel that I'm in the middle of nowhere. So it's like I don't belong to either side. There is a very strong sense of not belonging to anywhere, and there is a very strong sense of alienation and loneliness, which I think has become like the motive of my film.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the title, which I think is very, very beautiful. And I mean, just to recap it, a river runs, turns, erases, replaces. But I'd be interested in how you crystallize that down into a title that somehow seems so, yeah, so perfect?
Thank you. So first, because because the city was formed at the confluence of the Yangtze River and its branch, the Han River. So it's known as River City. So while I had this idea of making this film, I thought, okay, I wanted to not just film the riverside, but also use it in the title to, illustrate the relationship between the river and the city, and the river and the people, because the river is like the artery of the city in a way, and for us who live there, it's just at least me and also many people I know, we feel very attached to the river. So it's just an integral part of a memory. We always say, okay, this mighty river symbolizes the vitality. This mighty river symbolizes the force of life. So even after what happened last winter, people still say it. So right after the lockdown, I read from an interview that a resident said something like, okay, so as the city reopens, all the bad memories and pains will flow away, just like the river. And the city will receive its vitality again. So I think it's very sad to hear this. Even though, I understand the urgency of moving on. I understand the need of working out of that, unpleasant experience. But it's just so sad, and I feel helpless when I hear this, right after lockdown. And then, throughout the year, some of my friends told me more than once that, they didn't want to think about or recall anything from that winter. They just couldn't read or watch anything related to this experience. They didn't want to think about anything. So for them, I guess recalling seems like unbearable. So I guess these two attitudes or two reactions have taught a lot of things. Although they are opposite to each other, but in a way they're quite similar to each other, because at the end, what's going to happen is, many things will be forgotten by all of us as time passes. No matter it's because that we want to move on, or it's because that, it's just simply too painful to remember. So even though the title of the film is beautiful, I guess it also suggests something that's inevitable to come. Like, memories or the past or history will be, erased and replaced as life moves on for many, many reasons, despite of one's real. So, and I hope this process of forgetting, would be a very, very long process, though. Like, it could be as long as possible.
I think we have time for one more question. So, it would be super interesting to know, particularly at the moment where everyone has more time than they often otherwise would have. Are you working on anything else? Do you have any new projects that are sort of coming up?
I hope that I can write something, that I can take this time to write a script for a fiction project that has been in my mind for a few years. And also I really, really hope that me and James and my partner, we can finish the shooting of The Stranger, which is a project that we have been developing since 2017. We were supposed to shoot the film last year, but of course it was delayed and postponed. So yeah, I just hope we can do that.
No, I hope very much too. I'm very excited to see both. But yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting the film. Yeah, I'm very happy to present the Berlinale Forum.